So I want to talk about board of directors briefly because that's something that you've touched on a lot, and just kind of what is a board of directors for most of these small businesses that probably don't even have or even thought about having a board of directors. What's the value in it, and what's the purpose of it, and how do you build it?
Yeah, 100%. So a board of directors is a legal construct. It's in most of the ways uh, corporations get defined in the United States. So C corps, uh, S corps, LLCs, they all have some version of people who are responsible for the supervision and have a fiduciary duty to the company. And the fiduciary duty to the company is you do what's best for the shareholders and balancing that with all the other stakeholders that are involved, customers, employees, all that kind of stuff. So a board of directors, it's a legal construct. In practice, the easiest way to think about it is it's like, imagine your city council. If you have a city council for your city, it's that for a corporation. It is a board of people who vote on initiatives and approve things, speaking for the shareholders to make sure that the company does what it's supposed to do. And the reason boards can be made up of part-timers, but also very effective, is the same reason a lot of city councils are very effective. Have you ever? I'll go on a tangent here. Have you ever noticed how legislatures, like Texas legislature, probably Oklahoma legislature, Congress, total dysfunctional messes, but by and large, most cities do a really pretty good job. Have you guys
Yeah,
like?
absolutely.
So the fundamental reason is because Congress's job, let's just take Congress, has a much more difficult job. Their purview of all this budgeting and all this stuff that they have to cover, like declaring war and stuff, they have a lot of stuff there. So you have this mess of spaghetti that's just a really hard thing. So of course it's freaking dysfunctional. The reason cities tend to work incredibly well is because their scope of things that they're responsible for is very narrow. Hey guys, the 12 of you, your job is to make sure we have police and the trash gets picked up. Can you guys do that? They're like, yeah, we got you. You're like, no problem. So boards are kind of the same way that, in my opinion, a board done really well narrows down to a very specific set of responsibilities of things that it's going to be in charge of, right? And so, fundamentally, the board does a few things. One is hires and fires the CEO, right? Who's going to be the CEO? And then they let the CEO do their job. They approve big decisions. So there's big things that are material as defined in the way the corporation is set up. They have to approve certain things like acquisitions, loans, all that kind of stuff. And then they approve strategic plans and budgets, right? And done right, a board generally just does those three things. And that's why boards can be really functional, is because you just narrow down their thing, kind of like we do with the city council, and just say, I'm only going to do those things. Notice at no point did we say the board is going to run the company. They don't do that. The CEO does that, and they have their job, which is much harder than being on a board.
Matter of fact, if you've got a board member who tries to run the company, you got a serious problem.
Yeah, you need to fire them.
I'm saying, yeah, the CEO is kind of a real problem.
Yeah. Okay. So, and how do you incentivize a board?
The easiest way is if they're owners of the company. So one of the rules of creating a board is you have it as small as possible, but no smaller. So there are often times where I'm on boards of companies where there's a board of two, and one of us owns more than the other one. So that's how we break ties. It can be very straightforward. You already own the company, and you're all aligned around the shareholders because you are the shareholders. That's 100% the shareholder. Then there are other models in which people will have investors on boards. That is one model. Those people are incentivized because they're getting paid if the company does well, so they're aligned with shareholders. And then there are people that will show up on boards as outside independents, right? And that's very common. Say, for example, if you have a board that's, say, for example, 5 people, and the company has raised money, management and the founders, they're on the board. They might have 2 seats, and they're highly motivated to make sure that equity turns into something someday. The investors might have 2 seats, and they're highly incentivized to make sure the investors make money. And then you'll bring in an independent, and that may be somebody from industry or a neutral party that, because you want to have an odd number of people so you don't have any ties. The 5th person can come in, and they can get paid in multiple ways. The most common way is they get equity from an equity pool defined for the board members, and they have a meaningful stake in it. The best independent board members I've actually seen have come in and asked to invest in that company and put
Mm.
their own money to work. And they often did that when they walked in the room and realized they were the only person that hadn't invested in the company, either through sweat equity or money, and asked to put money into it. I've seen it happen multiple times, and those board members have been awesome. There are some schemes where people also get a stipend. They get paid to do that. There's upsides and downsides to that. Obviously, when you're getting a stipend of cash, that is much different than when you're an equity co-owner. So if you're
Right.
all aligned in co-owners, that's the ideal as much as possible.
You know, two things jump real quickly to mind thinking about our audience and my experience. One is there's a certain amount of liability to being on a board. People need to know about that when they do it. And at what level of company do you think it's practical to bring in a board? I mean, I guess it's situational on your company, but
Yeah.
5 million, 10 million, 50 million, it's asking people to do a lot.
Yeah. Look, I think most companies shouldn't have a board. I think most people who say are a small contractor, let's say you're 10 million a year contractor or 20 million a year contractor. My buddy owns a $25 million a year specialty contractor here. They do not have a board. He substitutes a lot of what people get out of boards by joining a CEO peer group. I'm part of one. We actually, one of the 12 businesses is actually a CEO peer group. We launched one last year called ScalePath for smaller businesses. And, I think that's where you can substitute that. My advice to people is don't have a board until you really feel like you absolutely must have one. And, you must have one at some point when you take outside investors. You must have one sometimes from a regulatory perspective. I've been in businesses that the regulators required them. Or you're going to be getting out of the CEO role. Those are all times when you really must do it. And I just encourage people, don't do it till you have to. But that stuff you get from a board, which is like advisory, opinions, experience, like all that kind of stuff. See if you can find another way to do it. And one way is a CEO peer group. I actually do it for a couple of companies. Like people pay me to be like board members at large for them. They pay me a retainer and we talk a couple hours a month. I'm not a CEO coach, but I'm like a board member that like when they have a problem, we talk about their problems. And I act like a board member, but I don't vote and I don't have a fiduciary duty or anything. So there's ways to do that, but I would just say, don't do a formal board until you absolutely have to. And for some people, they never have to. There's $100 million companies with no board. Don't waste time with formality unless you really feel like you have to do it. Find that stuff the other way if you can, because boards are a lot of work. You don't want to be managing a board. I do it all the time. It's a pain in the butt.